everyone. Welcome back to the Tech Show. My co-host Levi Lais and I have a really exciting episode for you today. We are going to be talking about one of my dear subjects, and Levi, I believe yours as well, which is augmented reality. And with the latest trend of what we've been talking about in the world of AI, how AR and AI kind of meet together and what the future of AR means in the context of AI. Before I dive into that, however, I wanted to share some of the latest of what's been going on in the world of AI, which is a little bit comical, but you'll see when I share my screen here. So I was looking at some news, as you can see on the screen here. What was the latest in AI last week? There's some cool stuff in here, so I'll go through a couple of these bullet points. Auto GPT is GPT-4 running fully autonomously. I don't know if you heard about that one, but this guy made this GPT-4 that writes some code, runs it, figures out why it broke or why it doesn't work, rewrites it, and it just like does this over and over until it like creates this perfect program. So it's like a GPT that an AI that can write its own program, fix itself, and kind of like keep improving it, which is pretty crazy. We've got here Baby Yagi. Somebody created this AI tool that translates code from one programming language to another. That's pretty epic, if you ask me. So there's all this like really crazy stuff. And this is just from the last week. And the bullet points go on and on and on. Mid-Journey released a new command, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think it could easily be, I don't know, 3 hours if I wanted to like do justice to all of it. And so this is on Reddit, right? And so I'm like, wow. So what does the top comment say? And down over here, TLDR top comment is stuff happening faster than you can read up on what stuff is happening.
That sums it up.
That sums it up. So I think that, yeah, so this kind of captures like, if you're wanting to keep up to date on AI and wanting to be like, hey, what was new last week? It's like impossible. I mean, Levi, what do you think about like the pace at which things are moving right now? Like, look at all this madness, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I think that AI has been a really, really big buzzword, and it's just been, it had its crescendo when ChatGPT was launched. And I don't know, maybe we still haven't hit the crescendo, but it felt like that was when it was just like, it hit a deafening volume of like, just like, whoa, that's a lot of news, I've noticed a lot of the different YouTubers that I follow and pros, experts, whatever you want to call them, in the space, the last week or so, they've kind of run out of steam. It feels like there's a lot of like, okay, let's just deep dive into the thing I care about now. I think that, we're seeing a real utility level advancement that is going to be hard to cover as in a meaningful, relevant way as a topic in and of itself.
Yeah.
I feel like augmented reality is still AR. It's still very limited in scope. And so you can go really deep in AR pretty quickly.
Would you say it's kind of like the automotive industry when it started to boom and somebody's trying to cover like every innovation and every little gear, every chain, every cylinder, like every oil type? Like it's getting to the point where it's becoming a whole industry. You can't possibly cover everything. There's going to be conferences for like every little part of it.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, it would be like trying to cover programming languages, maybe would be the analogy I would use,
Yeah.
And it's like, there's a new
category.
Yeah, it's way too big. Or packages. Like we're an NPM package, review. Like it would just be like, okay, I don't need, like when I need a package, I'll go find one. And then I'd like to see a review on it. But as far as like covering every package for every language ever, it's like, okay, that's a little bit much. So I feel like a lot of the folks that were like ChatGPT content, it was like, wow, that's really interesting. And then they're like, and now Bard, and now this new Mid-Journey 5, and like all these like, and then now it's like, because it's going so exponentially, a lot of these guys are kind of like, okay, I'm going to talk more about prompt engineering, or okay, I'm going to talk more about images and how they intersect with like the real world, you know.
Yeah.
So my hope, and I think yours too, is that like while we still cover a lot of tech, our experience is in augmented reality. And so I kind of like that this week's news, even though it's considered maybe light in it, like the grand scheme of AI, for us, it was like, oh, something we can really grab onto,
Yeah.
uh, that really has an impact on augmented reality, which, you know, I mean, you got into augmented reality in 2016, right?
Yep.
Like you were invited to be one of the first to purchase the developer version of the Hololens One. This was a year before ARKit was ever even announced,
Yep.
and I jumped in probably 3 or 4 months later to work with you on the design and UX side.
Yep.
So I really think that, like, you know, it may be hubris or pride, I don't know, but like I feel like if there's an expert in the developer space for AR, there isn't anybody that like predates us in that world, right? So like,
Uh-huh.
and we've been doing it full time. So if
Yeah.
10,000 hours and intimate experience is the qualification, we may not be good experts. I don't know. That's somebody else's. but we
Yeah.
qualify as far as like the at least the 10,000 hour rule. So
Uh-huh.
yeah. So I feel
10,000
like
hours of messing around,
yeah, right. Pretending, imposturing, or whatever they call it.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, exactly like you said. So in this haystack of AI news, there was one that really caught our attention. That's like kind of right down our alley, and this is something Meta announced just on April 5th. So hot off the press, just a few days ago. It's called SAM, Segment Anything, and it's pretty cool. Levi, do you want to give a quick overview of what this does?
Yeah, so it's interesting because it really affects your realm of the engineering side of things, and
Yep.
it really affects my realm of UI UX, like my actual workflow as a developer. So I'll talk about what's contextually relevant for me, and then maybe you could talk about what's contextually relevant for you. Otherwise, I would
Sure.
just keep
Sure.
going forever. So, so for design and user experience, I would, in order to be able to visualize a space and an experience, I would have to like go and grab images off of. I use Envato Elements, and I'd have to
Hmm.
like grab an image, and I'd have to go in and painstakingly cut out, like, you know, there was a hockey thing that we did for I think it was like the Maple Leafs or somebody who was like
Yep.
going to be training, right?
Yep.
And so to visualize this hockey training experience that we were building, I had to go in and like find the right rink, and then like find a hockey player in a pose that I wanted to visualize, and I'd have to go in and like cut out that hockey player, cut out a puck, you know, and then draw certain lines to different things to like really visualize it. And so those visualizations took a very long time, which means that I had to kind of know before I started what it was going to be, or else it would like take forever. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you know, you got one shot, maybe two, at cutting out a thing, and then you're like, okay, that's 2 hours or 3 hours. Like, I can't just spend a bunch of time cutting out iterations. Like, you know, people be like, oh, can we get it this pose, or can we, you know,
Yeah.
have them doing this? And it's like that was like a day of work to be able to visualize that. And it's
Yeah.
important work. It's really important to be able to like to see things in different contexts before you go and just build out this whole experience. And so I have this workflow where, you know, I'm using Sketch by Bohemian Coding, and I'm cutting things out, and I'm doing screenshot, and I'll export a screenshot, and I'm on my Mac, and I'm using preview spacebar and up and down arrows, and just talking through this visualized roadmap.
Yep.
Uh, and Sam changes that completely,
Yeah.
because you can upload an image, grab it, pop it out, boom, pop it out, boom. And I could actually like, I could animate now if I wanted to in less time than it took to do like these cutouts. So,
Yeah.
you know, while there isn't a really good design tool, if you're watching this, That's an idea. Please make it and invite me to the alpha test, because
Yep.
you know, there isn't a really great design tool for AR VR space. You kind of have to just make stuff and then go see if it was good. And so I've done a lot of work in the pre-visualization stage so that you don't have to waste all that money to go do those things. Um, but it still like has been a very heavy lift with very little flexibility as far as just iteration goes, you know?
Yeah.
And so I personally am amped about
Yeah.
this because it's not just like cutting out a person from a background, which Apple now has like baked into their operating system. This is like on 11. Like you're
Yeah.
getting the cutout and like what it is, and when you move it's like pinning it and keeping it. Like there's
Yep.
so many ways that this changes the user experience and design planning process going
Yeah.
into a project. It saves so much time, and time equals money for end clients. So I'm pretty excited about this one. This change, ChatGPT changed how I program.
Yep.
This changes like this affects like day-to-day work in the AR
Yeah.
space. So
Yep. 100%. 100%. Yeah. And if you look at this video that they are demoing, they're showing here, this is kind of more of an AR use case on this side of things. So the one above showed like just taking a static image and being able to pull out something, just like uploading an image and say, hey, give me a cutout of that knife, right? And boom, it'll like cut it out for you. You don't have to like even show it where it is, all that. But then down below, this shows like somebody actually wearing glasses, and the glasses is using this SAM technology to cut out all of these different objects, tell you what size it is, tell you, what it's classified as. I think for AR, this is going to be huge because us humans, although we think we have such, an ability to like see everything we're looking at, science shows that we actually don't, right? There's that classic experiment. I don't know if all of you guys have heard of it, but you're watching this football game and there's like a gorilla running through the field, right? And they're like, did you notice the gorilla? And most people are like, no, I didn't notice the gorilla.
yeah,
Right? But imagine if you're wearing glasses, like of course the AI would totally recognize the gorilla or any other anomaly, right? Think about like you're hiking through the forest and in your peripheral vision, AI is like, oh, I see poison ivy right over there, or hey, here's some stinging nettles right over there. Right? Or imagine like you dropped your earring or whatever, right? And you're wearing glasses looking for it, and the glasses like, hey, it's over there. I've
right.
segmented the whole thing. I'm able to spot it out. Our while our field of view is so wide, our actual like what we can focus on are like beams. It's like such a small part of our vision. And that on top of the way our brain processes things, I think this would be a huge help for when we finally get that wearable AR, which we might still be a ways away from it. But when we finally get that wearable AR, I think not even like having these like visually like highlighting everything the way it is in this video, but even just working in the background, and using like eye tracking tech and being like, hey, what's that over there? And it knows exactly what you're looking at. And it'll be like, oh, this is a species of parrot that is blah, 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 right?
Right.
So you can think about it adding so much information and context into our lives. It's crazy. Something that you said, Levi, right before we started the call was that AI is going to actually help AR, right? In a way that AR may have been fumbling a little bit over the last few years, trying to find its place. It's had some very niche use cases, but AI might be that thing that finally unlocks the technology. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that interacting with your physical space, there's a very foundational element
Yeah.
of uh like a requirement maybe of needing to have your space properly represented,
Yep.
right? So like we have a lot of AR where like we're creating a digital thing, we're putting it into the real world, and like I feel like the implementations of that like are almost, and so it's like to have something that works in AR and VR, because in AR you can set it down in their physical space. It's like okay, but like what does that really do? Like the only thing it could possibly do is give you some sort of a comparison between that visually and like the things around it. But
Yeah.
like without having intimate knowledge of the things around it, even that is so limited,
Yeah.
right? You could measure the size of it based on things around it almost instantly if you
Yeah.
know like what things are and what sizes are. And like if you have something dialed in uh spatially to a certain size, it could use that to, I mean, just measurements alone are just like transforming. The ability to like imagine a kid's game, I Spy, right? I Spy with
Hmm.
my little
Hmm.
eye, a stack of books, right? And it's like
Yeah.
you don't need to highlight it green. The kid just needs to look around. Oh, there it is, and then like tap the books, and it's like you found it.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's so many cool, interesting things that you can do when it's like when it actually understands reality. It could make
Yeah.
suggestions, it can make assumptions, it can like so much context can be gathered and like I think that's where you're it's almost like augmented reality in the past has been uh like the in like the opposite maybe, like if it's okay, here's reality and here's virtual.
Yeah.
Augmented reality was like one step from virtual, and they're
Yeah.
talking like it has something to do with reality, and it's like it's so disconnected still. Like you
Yeah.
can see what the plane is,
I'm
and
gonna
that's
grab my
it.
headset while you keep talking.
All right. So the other element I think that really, really gets impacted is if this is real time the way that it seems like it is, you have to imagine that the ability to, oh my god, what's the word, oh my gosh, what
Obstinate. I don't know.
uh the one where it gets in the way, like what is
Yeah,
that,
I
occlusion,
know what it is, but I'm gonna
occlusion.
botch it. I'm gonna botch it live, and I don't want to do that.
It's a occlusion. It
Occlusion.
was
Okay.
occlusion. Imagine how much more powerful occlusion's going to be now that it can
Oh
segment
yeah.
things in this way. Like that. So one of the biggest issues with AR was the ability to it's not interacting with reality if you're just superimposing images, right? You
Yeah.
might be able to keep it in a spot, maybe, but
Yeah.
because it has no understanding of the items in the spot. So if you're able to say, based on these dimensions, here's the assumed size of this thing,
Yeah.
like a dryer or a table, right?
Yeah.
Here's one leg. Let's assume the rest. So like there's going to be a level built on top of this, a layer on top of this that allows for absolutely incredible occlusion, because look at how
Yeah.
precise these
Oh
lines are.
yeah.
This so
Hundred
anyways,
percent.
those are
Hundred
just a
percent.
few of the things that come to mind where like this new AI revolution will absolutely transform the experience in augmented reality. And it's a whole new conversation to talk about what type of utility actually becomes possible with this new foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So this is the Hololens, and to be honest, the form factor of like the Meta Quest Pro, which is arguably, is it really AR? I'm not sure. It's like they all roughly look like this. Even though like the new HTC headset, like yeah, it's different, but they're they're more headset than they are glasses, right? And so the question is, you know, a lot of these AI technologies, while they are improving, they're still very, very computationally expensive, much more computationally expensive than what they can run on a device of this size, right? So if you think about, all right, if it's even too heavy to run on this a device of this size, and if this is way, like, I don't know about you, but this is way bigger, bulkier, clunkier than I would ever want to wear out in public. I would want to wear out in public like what you're wearing right now, Levi.
Right.
Maybe a little bit thicker than that is fine, but not a helmet, right? Not goggles like this. I would not want to walk around the mall or walk around the store, like grocery store, with this thing on, right? I could right now go to Fred Meyer, go to Walmart, wherever, and like walk around with this. But you know,
I think
I
it's cooler. It's cooler if you put a hat on.
yeah. Right. So how are we going to get AI, this level of AI, into smaller headsets? And I don't think the answer is, oh, computers will get more powerful. Because if anything, history has shown us that our appetite for computing has far outpaced the increase in computing power, right?
Right.
And I think it's got to do with remote, like something remote, whether it's cloud based or whether it's a machine, running it at your house or your business. But it's got to have something to do with, hey, you need to be rendering things, computing things, processing things remotely, and streaming them to an ultra thin glasses like device.
Right.
uh, because let's face it, graphics cards are not getting any smaller. They're getting way more powerful, but every year graphics cards gets more and more large. Like the physical size gets larger. Our
Right.
like maybe our phones and our computers are getting smaller, but to be honest, what's really powering them is all in these massive, like acres and acres sized data centers that are remote. So really, like we're kind of fooling ourselves to think that, oh, computers are getting smaller, this and that. Yes, but technically they're getting much bigger. Your phone is technically probably bigger than the size of your house if you count like all the data centers processing all the videos and pictures and everything that you stream and watch and look at. So I
Right.
think it's going to be no different than the phone and then the headsets, right? Headsets may get smaller, but what's actually powering them, it's not going to be all in one like this, where there's like zero connection to the outside world. It's going to be a lot more connected. And I think AI, all the computation that's required by AI is going to be a heavy part of that. Do you
Right.
think it's going to be more cloud based, or do you think it's going to be more like house based?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the graphics cards that are powering the screens and displays are the same cards that are powering these vector driven transform like LLMs,
Yeah.
right? The large language models
Yeah.
use these GPUs.
GPU all the way. Yeah.
So I would imagine a machine, local machine, similar to what would it be? Like I guess, like a router, a modem or a router. Or you could almost use like the electrical panel as maybe a metaphor for it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, where it's a hub of processing power,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I feel like there's been so much like on work done on board the headsets that and in the phones that could be offloaded. And so the same way that you wouldn't have electricity out in the woods. You wouldn't have, probably wouldn't have Wi-Fi obviously out in the woods. You may have cell service. Like I think that you'll get the closer you get to a hub. When we actually uh back in like 2018 came up with, we had a company that we were going to start that we were looking into and just got distracted with client work uh, called Realm, where we
Yep.
talked about having a spatial anchor like in the
Mm-hmm.
office, right, of the grocery store, and then you would have like drop points, like anchors basically throughout the store. And so they would all be calibrated to each other so that when the headset saw that anchor, it would recalibrate. This was before a lot of like like Google
Yeah.
Cloud anchors and Azure's cloud
Yep.
stuff. Like none of that existed when we were doing this.
Yep.
And so it was sort of like our proposed solution to persist a larger space, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if we're going to see something where, you know, you'll have models, like base models, where it could
Mm-hmm.
look at the room, it could recognize these gaze based objects, remove these objects from the
Mm-hmm.
space to assume the walls and the space behind it, and
Yeah.
then contextually place things, and then only check to see if those
Yeah.
things are in the same place, right? So I think
Totally.
that we're not very far from having a whole lot of processing happening for a house,
Yeah.
for a grocery store, for a mall, a
Yeah.
store in a mall. And so I think that it's going to be something where, like, instead of having your data in the cloud, you would almost have your spatial information uh componentized and classified, and in a local environment, so that it's not hitting the cloud and coming back with all this data.
Yeah.
Like, you're just getting charged for the electricity because the computer you bought is essentially giving you that locally. So there's low latency, there's high processing.
Yeah.
um I and so I think that it's going to be a really cool uh solution when it's all sort of organized and put in its right place, and
Yep.
packaged in a way where you have whatever headset you have, you can sync up with this localized processor,
Yeah.
10 GPUs, right? So you have your AI, you have your
Mm-hmm.
spatial information, you have your models, and then can
Yeah.
store localized information that you don't necessarily need elsewhere. You could have a backend, backup if you wanted to. You could do read only instances of the data, like, from the cloud. Like, there's all
Yep.
kinds of cool things you could do, but it really starts to center around a need for a device that has this, like, souped up GPU, like, cut elsewhere, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe you don't have to store uh full on mesh models. Maybe you don't have to store, like, maybe you can, like, offload certain data points that, similar to when you make an app and then you have your S3 bucket, and so you get your data, but then you queue up, some async calls to get all of your images in. And so you'll see a website way before the image loads in if you have slow internet. Like,
Yeah.
maybe that type of parsing out, of offloading certain types of data, where you could have, like, a reasonably small storage, reasonably small RAM, and
Yeah.
really focusing in on just the massive amount of processing it's going to take to do all of these things that we're going to want to do now that we have the ability to do them.
Yeah. And keeping the form factor still small.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I feel like in the last few minutes that we have, I feel like there's kind of an intersection happening here. So we've got AR, we've got AI, and I think what you're starting to touch on is a little bit of decentralization as well, right? Because I think in the world of Web3, there's this brewing sentiment. I would say it's still pretty small, but it's growing on you know this the I don't know, hatred might be a strong word, but this um, people don't like large companies like Meta or Facebook like owning the data, seeing the data, selling the data, right? And so the thought of like, hey, I'm sending all of these images up of my house to Meta's cloud to segment everything, like
right,
I'm sure that sends shivers down people's spine, which is where this hub kind of comes into play, where it's like, okay, maybe not everyone would want it, but there's probably going to be a good chunk of people who would never use this tech unless they know, like, hey, this is my hub. I've downloaded the model, I've purchased the model, whatever, it's on there, it's running it. I'm not sharing, all the books on my bookshelf up to Google or Meta or Microsoft or Facebook.
right,
They're running this hub in their house, and that kind of like goes to like the OG in decentralization, which is cryptocurrencies, right? People running their own nodes. There's not this big government entity somewhere, mining all of these coins or running all of these nodes. It's decentralized. People are running these hubs in their houses. So I'm wondering if this Web3 part of it kind of makes that intersection as well. where, yeah, there will be some big players, there will be some huge data centers that people will have to tap into, but there's going to be a healthy amount of decentralization as well. And what do you think about that intersection?
So I think that a server morphing into the shape of a node based mesh in a sort of a decentralized, vein. I
Yeah.
think that that could make some sense, using maybe some sort of a crypto coin that incentivizes the use of your machine when you're not actively engaging
Yeah.
in like your own AI services and ARs,
Yeah, when you're not processing large language models or images or this and that, when it's just idle, it's mining crypto coins.
Right, right. And so like the more people nearby, maybe there's this node based like geolocation, you know, mesh where it's like within 5 miles, this is a shared
Oh.
pod
Ooh, okay.
where
So
maybe
not
you
not selfish decentralization, but almost like a generous decentralization.
yes,
Ooh, okay.
yeah.
Wow. Ah.
And I just made that up right now. I think out loud. This is just me coming up. I probably shouldn't have said that because we got to go
Patent
make
it.
it, right? Yeah. Oh crap.
Trademark.
But yeah, right. But
I like
yeah, I think that you know, a cell based or pod based or whatever you'd want to call it, where like if me and then like three neighbors connect to this system, we don't even need to be aware of each other. If everybody's using it at the same time, the system maybe
yeah.
has a bit of a like similar to like with cable or whatever, you have a
Yeah.
bit of a depression, but most of the time you'd probably be using them at different times. And so you would get, maybe a benefit of like added compute, elsewhere. Like it gets kind of expensive, but then again, like if you're getting compensated for your usage when it's off, like the person using it's paying,
Yep.
to have that processing. And it's just sort of a different type of utility structured in a different way. That's kind of the only way I could really see something like that happening. Otherwise, if your computer's gone, all your stuff is gone, there's no backup. If you're going to back it up, you'd have to do it in the cloud. Who owns the cloud? These big companies. You don't really
Yeah.
have a solution. So
Yeah.
if it's going to be connected, it needs to be, I think, intelligently connected in a way like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that said, I don't think that that's how it happens, because these companies have a ridiculous amount of money, have every incentive to make sure that they're getting their data.
There's a
And
reason
so,
why they're pumping out these technologies. It's not because they're generous of heart,
no,
and kind.
yeah, it's data collection.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and I think that I've always been of I work in decentralized tech, and
Hmm.
I'm like saying yes to everything Google asks of me because I don't like ads that are irrelevant. Like they drive me crazy.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
personally, I'm like, just, take whatever data you need. I'm not a bad guy. I'm not going to go do stuff I shouldn't do. And I would like some
Yeah.
good curated,
Yeah.
marketing, like, so I find value in sharing my data.
Hmm.
But I also overshare with my personal life with friends. So, and strangers actually. Julie could give you some stories there, but I, I'm a very open book. And actually, I don't even know if I have a cover, to be perfectly honest. I'm like, it's a spiral notebook with no cover. But anyway, so I think that there's this element of like the big companies pushing this tech out, but then
Yeah.
uh, this is going to be a device that I don't know that it could take off the same way if it wasn't like in a keynote on Apple's stage. Like if
Yeah.
Apple
Yeah.
launches the new, Apple HomePod 2.0 has
Yeah.
a FaceTime camera, a built-in Apple TV, and all like 10 GPUs for processing, and they leverage their
Yeah.
AirPlay technology technology and all their like super fast Bluetooth 10 or whatever it is they have in there that just makes AirPods click in,
Yeah.
I think that that's what's going to make it like so that everybody's going to start fully incorporating very contextually relevant spatial information in a home. I
Yeah.
don't think it's going to be a third party company. If it were, I'd love to give a shout out to my boy Landon with
All
Arc,
right.
right? Um, that's a company to watch. They've announced their hub and what they're doing, and
Okay.
they're
All right.
but it's it's very stealth, so there's not a lot of details about it that are publicly available, but they've got some interesting ideas on the data privacy and those types of things. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it could go either way, really. Like it depends on who, like how it's done, how well it's done. But I feel like if history is any indicator, it's probably going to be a big splash by a big,
Yeah.
company, and everybody's going to have one. It
Yeah.
it won't take off without the light form factor,
Yeah.
without the headset. That like
Yeah.
it can't take off without
Yeah.
something you would just wear around your house while
I,
you're cleaning.
I really do think Apple is probably, of the big tech companies, Apple is best positioned to sell something like that because their business model isn't like Facebook's or Microsoft's, where they're not relying on mass user data. Like they make their money from selling hardware, selling
Right,
phones, selling earpods, selling devices, right? Not
right,
services. Whereas Google, Facebook, Microsoft, it's not about the hardware, it's about the services. So just from a purely privacy, like customer comfort standpoint, I can see Apple being best positioned. That's not to say things will change, but we'll have to keep a close eye on the space.
yeah,
Well, looks like we're just about out of time, Levi. This was a fun conversation, and I think we'll have
yeah,
plenty more mixed reality, AI, edge tech stuff to chat about in the future. Been really enjoying these shows.
yeah. This is fun. It's a good
Yeah,
time. I'd love to get
absolutely.
some comments too. If you've watched it this far, please chime in. Give us your thoughts. We'd love to have conversations with you guys about these things. If you guys, if you're watching this and you need help building something out, you have questions with projects you're working on, like we're pretty open with just about all of our, you
Yep.
know, experience and thoughts and those kinds of things. So feel free to connect with us. So
Yep.
just wanted to say that.
100%. And the obligatory, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff.
Right? I don't think we've
Yeah.
ever said that. Maybe that's
I don't
why
think
we
so.
only have 5 views. No,
Reminder, like and subscribe and comment down below.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Have a good one, everyone.
All
Bye
right.
bye.